off here. Oh, maybe did he go to? Maybe he went to Shul. I'll just go tell him. I forgot to remind him we were learning first. I mean, I drove him here. So
Where's he live?
he lives in Winston Towers, the second one from Pratt.
I was talking about that. I took a phone there. I'm like, Jack, you know what a lot of us outside is? You. You have no idea. Can you imagine?
So I remember him as a child.
I've seen him my whole life.
I'm saying,
I have no idea who he is.
I remember him as a child. He got a Gemara.
We got one over here. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
You want an article, Jack?
No, he doesn't use the. I'm trying to think. Hey, there's a Yuma right here. Here's a Yuma.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Lamed Daled, Lamed Hey, in Maseches Yuma. Right. So we left off by the top. We were discussing Abaye. Abaye was Masader, the Maracha, the order of the Avoda. I think it was in the name of Avashol. So it says Umincha lechavitin. It says Mincha came before the Chavitin. Now the Mincha actually here is a part of the Mincha of the Tamid, right? So it says Ola Umincha. So the Chavitin was its own Mincha offering, and the Mincha, when it first states Mincha, that means the Mincha part of the Tamid, which is also brought with it, and the Chavitin was part of its own separate korban. So why did the Mincha come before the Chavitin? So the Gemara says because it says Ola Umincha. Right, so the Ola, so parts of the Ola were brought before the Mincha, and therefore the Mincha comes with the Chavitin. The Chavitin and the Sachin. So it says Shu Mincha, because once we're already offering Mincha offerings, then let's offer the Chavitin offering. On the Sachin and Musafin, and then the next step was the Nesachim, the libations that accompanied, right, or the wine that accompanied the Tamid, even though the Mincha part of the Tamid already came, but then they brought all the flour offerings, and now they brought the wine. That comes before Nesachim, because it says Zevach u'Nesachim, right? So it says over there that it says Zevach u'Nesachim, that nothing, that basically the no other korban should come in between, right? A korban and it's Nesachim, you can't offer another one in between. So don't, so you shouldn't do the Musafin before the Nisach Yayin of the Tamid. So therefore, finish up the Nesachim and then you do the Musafin. The Musafin the Bezichin, and then the Musafin, and let's say on Shabbos when they have extra offerings, right? So they offer those, and those become before the Bezichin from the Lechem Hapanim. The spoon is of the frankincense that were offered from those. I've tiny Bezichin kaidin the Musafin. So we learned somewhere else another brisa that says Bezichin came before the Musafin. So the answer is Tanahi. It's a machlokes Tanaim as to that order. And Amar Abaye, we step about the Amar Musafin kaidmin leBezichin. It's more logical to say, right? Like we go like the Mandamar, which says the Musafin come before the Bezichin. Why is that? Lavmi Amarta baboker lahaktim, right? So normally we darshan earlier. It says baboker, and that baboker said to tell us to do it early in the morning. So over here, right, when it comes to the Musafin, right, it says bayom, right? So it says over there it's by the Bezichin. It says over there bayom twice, bayom. So just like boker is darshaning means early, so bayom means like later in the day. So therefore, the Bezichin should be later in the day. And my time, the Mandamar Bezichin kaidin the Musafin. So what were the other opinions? The Mandamar say, well, the Bezichin come before the Musafin. So Gamar chuka mechaviti. So he learns over there Gzeir Shel of chuka from the Chavitin, right? Right. Rashi brings out the Chavitin Ksiv Chak Olam LaHashem. Taktiv Bezichin says Kodesh Kodeshim LaHashem Chak Olam, right? And therefore, and just like the Chavitin come before the Musafin, so too the Bezichin should come before the Musafin, and that is learned from the Gzeir Sheva of Chayk. If that's the case, right? Let's learn everything from there. That it also should come before the Nisachim. So but it nevertheless does say bayom by the Bezichin. So therefore, to tell you, it comes after the Nisachim, but however before the Musafim. Fine, 2 dots. Now that we just finished the order, the brisa that was brought when we were Masader the Maracha. Right, that we made the order of the Maracha, the Abaye was Masad Merachim, which made the right, and the Libid is Abashol. So now going back to the Mishnah. So we had the Mishnah, those of you who recall, right? Also, when preparing, I completely forgot the Mishnah that we were discussing that order of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, right, you look, looks like it's the Mishnah's on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. So it says over there, right? He would go, he would mark the Ketarish Shachar, Lahadi Vizaneris, Hakras Rosh, Varim, Vachavit, Vasiyan, Ketarish Shachar. So now I'm just reading for the Mishnah Lamed Aleph from Beis. So it said over there, right? So it says Ketarish Shachar Haisa Kriva Beidam Levarim. When it comes to the morning Tamid, right? The Ketarish of the morning was brought between the blood and the limbs, right? The limbs being offered. And Shel Ben Arbayim. And when it comes to the Tamid of Ben Arbayim, when was the Ketarish of the Ketarish brought? So that comes Bein Eivar L'Nesach. That comes after the limbs, but before the Nesachim. So according in the morning, it comes before the Eivarim, and the afternoon, the Ketarish comes after the Eivarim. So that's what we're going to discuss from the Mishnah. So Mani, whose opinion is this? Right, this order. I Rabbanan, if this Rabbanan. If you say it's Rabban from our Mishnah, so they hold that really that the Ketarish should become between the blood and the Neros, right? The blood and the Neros, not the blood and the Eivarim. And even Abashol, and if it's Abashol, right, according to Abaye, it was Masad Meracha, Bein Neros Eivarim. But if you look at the order, the Ketarish that was brought between the Neros of the Eivarim. So the Gemara answers, "Liyalam Rabbanan he ubesija loikamari." Really, it's like the Rabbanan, and our Mishnah is not so specific when it comes to the order. In other words, we want to establish it like the Rabbanan, because it also says like Abashol, right? But we want to establish it like the Rabbanan, and therefore, nevertheless, our Mishnah. So I look at the order of the Mishnah. This is the order. This is the order. Our Mishnah was lav dafka, was not necessarily going in order. And the one in the afternoon was coming between the Eivarim and the Nesachim. So Minahani Mili, so how do you know this? How do you know that the Ketarish was brought after the Eivarim but before the Nesachim in the afternoon? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Amrakra, the pasuk says, "Keminchas haboker knisko ta'aseh." It says over there, right, like the mincha of the morning, uknisko, right, and like it's Nesachim, you shall do. So ma minchas haboker Ketarish kadems Nesachim, just like the mincha of the morning, right? The Ketarish came before the Nesachim. Afkan Ketarish kadems Nesachim. So to over here, the Ketarish comes before the Nesachim. So therefore, it comes before. So imal holam Ketarish kadems leivarim. Afkan Ketarish kadems leivarim. If that's the case, in addition to be before the Nesachim, which is like both cases, it should also be before the Eivarim. Why not make it like the morning? Right, mincha, which comes before the limbs, right? So the Ketarish should come before the Eivarim, just like in the morning, so too in the afternoon. So miksiv keivari haboker. It doesn't say it should be like the Eivarim of the boker. It says keminchas haboker. Only like the mincha, keminchas haboker, like keivari haboker. In other words, it should be like. In other words, when it comes to the mincha, then it comes before the Nesachim. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the Eivarim, that the Eivarim come before or the Eivarim come afterwards. Rather, the Eivarim in the afternoon come before the Ketarish in the afternoon. And Tana Rabbanan, 2 lines from the bottom on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph. Tana Rabbanan, it says Venisko Revis Hahin, right? And it's Nesach, it's libation, right? Is Revis Hahin, is 1 Revis, right? A quarter of a hin, right? A hin is 12 lugin, right? So a hin is 12 lugin, so therefore a revis, a quarter of that, right? A quarter of that is a 3 lugin, right? So he says Yulmach Shachar Mishal Arbis, and over here, so we're going to learn the shachas from Arbis. So because the pasuk says, it says V'nisko Revisa. I'm just reading for the pasuk on the side, which is broad on the side. It says V'nisko Revisa. Hein la kevas hacha b'kodesh hasech nesach sheichar laHashem. And the next pasuk says V'esa kevas hasheni. Right, so it says, let's learn that both of them, the Yumat Shachar Mishal Arvis. So we learn from here that the morning Nesach is just like the morning one is just like the afternoon one. And Rabbi Yomer, Arvis Mishal Shachris. No, we learn Arvis Shel Shachris.
They're called the Mincha Tamid, the Arvis. Is that what's going on?
Bein Arbayim is the afternoon, the one brought in the afternoon, right? So that's the one that the separate one. So now the question is, which one is learning from which one? So Rebbe says the afternoon is learned from the morning. Now, the pasuk is really talking about the morning, and therefore we learn the afternoon from the morning, as opposed to the Rabbanan. They had the pasuk is really talking about the afternoon, and we learn the morning from the afternoon. So Bishlam the Rabbanan, Hai B'Tamid, Hai B'Shal Rabbayim, see, according to the Rabbanan, right? Because it's talking about the Tamid Shal Ben Rabbi. So Ella Rebbe my time. So Amar Rabbi Bar Ula Omakra lekeves ha'echad. It says lekeves ha'echad. Ezu keves shenamar ba'echad. Hav yomer zeh tamid shel shacha. Right? Because when the pasuk says, right, lekeves ha'echad. Right? The one. Right? The one meaning talking about the morning one. The morning one is the first one. So therefore, the pasuk is not talking about the Ben Arbayim. It's talking about the morning one. V'Rabbana and my echad. So the Rabban, why is that about Echad? Because really the passage of the Kra is the previous pasuk talks about morning first, then afternoon, right? And then it discusses the Revis Hahid, right? Right, and then it talks. So in other words, since it left off, the second one is talking about Ben Arbayim, right? It's because of the Ben Arbayim. Right, because if you look at pasuk Zayin, and then it goes to pasuk Ches, which talks about the afternoon one. So the Chayr is talking about the afternoon one. So he says, no, since it says Ha'echad, you don't go the passage of the order of the pasuk. Rather, you say it's referring to the afternoon one. So the Rabban and my Echad. If you're talking about that, it's talking about the libations of the Ben Abayim. Why say Echad? So the one answer is no. Miyuchad Sheb Edro. We're talking about, in other words, it's teaching you a separate halacha that when you choose an animal for the Talmud, you should choose something that is miyuchad b'shem edro, something which is special, right? Your best one. The Rebbe, and where does he learn that halacha from? Mivchar nidrechem nafka. He learns that from the pasuk says you should use your choicest, right, for your nidar. Right, so in the Rebbe, so he learns it from there. So if that's the case, the Rabbanan, why don't they learn it from there? He says, no, you need both. And I was there's two times you choose your choicest animal, right? One is when there's a chiyuv, and one is when it's just an adava, right? Maybe you think that either one has a svara, right? To say that, hey, maybe since it's an obligation, I have to bring the nicest one, but if it's a regular, nether, I don't have to. So therefore, it tells you by nether. And in this case, maybe only by nether, something that I'm bringing on my own, I should bring the nicest. But if it's an obligation, I can bring any. That's so too. With the drasha applies to both cases. And then we said back in the Mishnah, we said im haya kohen gadol zaken or istanis, right? If he was older, or he was more particular when it comes to the temperature, right? They used to go ahead and warm up the water. So Tanya, we're going to write Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So he says, Ashios shel barzel hayu mechamin erev Yom Kippur matil tzayne kedei shetafik sinasa. They used to go ahead and take slabs of metal, right? And they would heat them up on Erev Yom Kippur, and they would put them in the cold water, and therefore these slabs of metal, right, were a source of heat. They would cause the cold water basically to turn warm. So, well, isn't this an issue of mitzarif, right? It's an issue of he's hardening, right? Since you have metal, right, that is boiling hot, right, and you put it in cold water, you're hardening the metal. You're hardening the metal, and that is that is also to do on Shabbos, right? Because you're strengthening it. Right? So it says
what's the malacha there? Maka b'patish.
So the malacha of it, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. He's being right. Maka b'patish up a utensil, hardening something, which we'll soon see is Ister Derabanan. It's not necessarily Raisa, but yeah, very good. So it's so this is something that he's hardening. So why isn't that? So the Gemara says, no, we're not talking about where it's heated up to that point. It's just hot, not super hot, where it's actually hardened and it's strengthening the metal. And Abai Yomar, afilu tema shegil etzirif, even if it's that hot, davar shein miskavein mutter. Since he's not intending to harden it, his whole purpose is not hardening it. And you could also say perhaps it's not a something which is a psik ratio, which is automatically going to happen because perhaps the bars will be removed before they get fully hardened. So therefore, since it's not his intentions, therefore it would be mutter. And this, by the way, is those of you who have the Gemara. This is one of the longest Tosfos that I recall seeing in in Shas, right? You see, it starts on the top of Lamed Aleph and Beis, and it goes all the way to the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. So those of you who find yourselves have extra time tonight, perhaps go over this Tosos. Fine. Anyway, Umi Omar Abaye Hachi, and who says Abaye holds that this would be mutter? But Tanya, we're learning a brayso. Says basar or lasso. It says by a person who has saras, right? So it says you should go ahead. So it says by bris milah, right? You can go ahead and give him a bris milah by and his flesh. So and what do we learn from the pasuk? The words basar or lasso, right? The flesh of his orla, right, of his foreskin. Right? Even if there's he has some taras, right, in that makom, right, that you can remove. Normally there's an isser, you're not allowed to go ahead and remove any taras, right? You can't cut it off. So how could you cut off your orla, right? If there's taras in the orla, so the pasuk comes to teach you, you're allowed to do it. Div Rabbi Yeshua. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. They ask over there, Kra Lamali, right? Why do you need a pasuk over there, right? It's basically davar shemis kavin. He's not intentionally cutting it to go ahead and remove the tzaras. He's cutting it for the purpose of bris milah. Right? So Rabbi says no, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's davar shemis kavin, which is aser. So Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda that finds it necessary for the pasuk to teach you that. So therefore, you see that when it comes to when it comes to davar shemis kavin, it really should be aser. So our answers hani mili b'chol Torah kula, right? This is talking about b'chol Torah kula about hachat siraf derabanan hu. But over here, this is only a derabanan, right? It's not a deraisa, right? It's not a deraisa to cut it off, and therefore it would be mutter, right? Rashi adds vein shvus mikdash, right? It doesn't say here, right? Because we're not talking about this issue as a shvus, rather talking about because it's considered to be a davar shem miskavein when it comes to tziruf, which is only derabanan. It's not necessarily deraisa. So when Eddie asks, "Hey, which malach is it?" It's not necessarily a deraisa, and therefore that's the reason why. And as he's pointed out, there's a nice long tosos on this piece. If you find yourself to have extra time tonight, it starts from the top of Lamed Aleph and Beis and it goes to the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. So that's a big tosos. Yeah, one of the biggest I've seen. Anyway. Anai Mishnah, Zok the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Heviu lebeis parva. So they bring him now to the base of parva. Base of parva was the area that we mentioned earlier. Those of you who have the picture, this is number 27. That's where he went to the mikvah, right? That was on the side of the Kodesh, and right down here, it was a base of parva. One of the chambers was called the base of parva. We'll soon see why it was called base of parva. So it said, Havilo Beis Parva Kodesh. It was in the Kodesh, and Parsa Sadin Shel Boots. They go ahead and hold up a sheet of linen, Bein Levein Am, like a privacy curtain between him and the nation. And Kidesh Yodov Raglav Pashat. He would go ahead and wash his hands and his feet, and then he would remove his golden clothing. Rameir Pashat Kidesh Yodov Raglav Yarad V'Tavos. And Rameir says, no, first he would take off his clothing and then he would wash his hands. We saw that Machlokas earlier as to the order of when you disrobe and then when you go ahead and wash your hands. Is it before or after you disrobe? And Yarad, he goes down to the Tavah, he goes to the mikvah, Allah, he gets up and he's stopping and he dries off. Hevulo big day love, and he bring his linen clothing, his special linen clothing that are worn once a year or twice a year, but only on one day of the year in Yom Kippurim. Lavash. The key, so he gets dressed, then the Kidesh Yadav Raglav, then he goes ahead, washes his hands and his feet. Everyone agrees to that order. He gets dressed first and then washes it after. And B'Shachar,
Okay. I have a question though. You said they bring him to the base of Parva, and then it says of a Kodesh Hayisa.
Right.
But in the picture, it doesn't look like that's in the Kodesh. That looks like it's outside the Azara.
No, it's here. It's the picture here. If you could, here's the wall in between. Here's the Kodesh over here, and it's over here.
Oh, it's still within the Azara, but it's in the Ezra's Yisrael.
Yeah, it's that line there. All right.
I see. Okay.
So, and then brought him of right. They the one in the morning they brought out from it was the type of material from the Pelusin Shel Shnei Masar Mana that was worth 1,200 or 12, right? 12 mana, right? 1200 ben abayim, and the one in the afternoon hanaduyin. Those are made, I guess, by Hindus, right? Hindu type of material. Shel shmona meyas zuz. There were 800 zuz. The first one was 1200 zuz. The next one was 800 zuz. Divi Rameas bin Rameir. No. The morning one is actually more expensive. That was 1800 zuz, right, which is 18 mana. The Ben Abayim, the one in the afternoon was Shel Shneimaser mana. That was a little less expensive. That was the one that was 12 mana. And Hakol Shleishim mana. And by the way, 1800 or 18 mana plus 12 mana is 30 mana, right? That was the total cost of his expensive. And Michelle Tzibur and the Tzibur and that was what the Tzibur has to provide. And if he wants to go ahead and even make them nicer and more expensive, then he's allowed to go ahead, but from his own pockets and not from communal funds. Fine. That was the Mishnah. Now, top of the page on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. So we said he goes to the base of Parva. Samai Parva. What is this? Why is it called base of Parva? So Amrav Yosef Parva Amagusha, right? So it says Parva Magusha. So Rashi points out that Rashi says Mechashiv Echad, Bana Shmo Parva, right? So it says a certain witchcraft or something that was done. He built it, and his name was Parva. It doesn't necessarily mean it was done b'kishu. It wasn't necessarily done with black magic, like so rather he was like it was so smart, I guess, the way they had in terms of the water being up, and then I guess the plumbing and the flow of the water. Therefore, it was like it was magic. It was a very it was an engineering phenomenon. So therefore, it was compared to Machashi, but the guy's name was Parva, and that's why it was called Besa Parva. Yeah. So Parsu Sudin Shalbutz, and then the next part of the line of the Mishnah says they spread out a sheet of linen. So Maishna Shalbutz, we saw this earlier. Why is it boots? So Rav Kahana Kadesh Yakish Avodas Hayom with Big David. So it's a reminder that basically today's Avodas Hayom is done in his linen garments. And the Shachar Yalevesh Plusin Shashmonas Evechule. Then this Machlokas. One said it was 1200 in the morning, 800 in the afternoon. Another second opinion was no, it was 1800 in the morning, 1200 in the afternoon for a total of 30. So the Gemara says it tells you it's 1230. I have a time in Yana. What? It's coming to teach us math. We didn't know how to go ahead and add. 1800 plus 1200 is 3000, right? We didn't understand that. So the Gemara says no. That means that's the total. In other words, the total should be 30, right? 30 mana. That should be the total. So if one is a little more, or the other one's a little less, and the other one should make up for it a little more, or vice versa. Less lamba, right? Now, so if one is a little less, the other one's a little more, then we have no issue with it. So if the first one is only 1600 and the second one's 1400, then it's okay. Or if the first one is 2000 and the morning one is 1000, it's also not an issue. Tikuli alma mias the shachar adifik binola. Nevertheless, everybody holds that the morning one was the more expensive one. That was the more expensive one. So why should that be the more expensive one? Minolan, where do you know that from? So Amar Rav Huna Bered Rav Diloi Amar Kra. The pasuk says, "Bud, and bud." Right? It says it 4 times. 4 times. The pasuk's brought inside Vayikra Tezayin Dalad. Right? I'm just reading the pasuk. It says Ksainas Bud. Right? Kodesh. Yilvash Michzei Bud Yal B'Sarav Avnei Bud Yaakov Seves Bud. Right. So it's mentioned 4 times. So 4 times regarding the morning, right? Regarding the morning avoda when he comes in. So therefore, I'm muvchar b'bud. It should be the choicest. It should be the nicest of all his linen garments. That's the more expensive one. Fine. Top of the page. Alamed Hey Amud Beis. Meisvei Yasu Kasha. It says v'lov shu begadim acher. So the pasuk over there in Yecheskel, which was describing, right, the services on Yom Kippurim, it says v'lovshu begadim acherim, and he wore other garments, right? So it says, and he didn't go ahead and wear, basically when he went ahead and go meet and greet, right after the avoda, right? Everyone lines up to wish the rabbi good Shabbos, right? So over there they still, I guess, line up and greet the Kohen Gadol after his avoda in Yom Kippur in the afternoon. So he wore different clothes, right? So he would not wear those. So my lav acherim chashuv mehen says, right, and he would wear other ones that were more. So is not referring to the acherim when he says other ones, right? Is not chashuvim, right? And Rashi points out because if they were more chashuv, right, right? Right? Why would you use this lotion of, he wore other clothing? So Gemara answers, lo, acherim chusiman. When it says acherim, he had the other ones that were worn, right? That were to remove it. Those were acherim. Those were actually less valuable than the morning ones when he did the actual avoda, as opposed to just retrieving the machta, right? And therefore, when it says acherim, is actually referring to less expensive, and therefore the less expensive ones were the ones that were worn in the afternoon. And Tani Rav Huna Tani Rav Huna Bar Yehuda, and some say Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Achar shekalasa avodas tzibur kohen she'asala ima k'tainas loivshav oivi ba'avodas yach levad shem serena l'tzibur. That after he did his avodas tzibur, right? The avodas tzibur, basically the morning tzibur, the morning avoda that was called avodas tzibur, the avoda of the congregation. That was the actual avoda which was done inside the mikdash, which we'll describe later when his first visit into the Kodesh HaKodashim, what he did there. So if his mother or his family member made him his own ketainas, as his own tunic, right, to go ahead and perform the avoda, so he can go ahead and use that for the avodas yachid. He can use that for the private one, which was referring to, as Rashi points out, that was referring to the hotzos kafamachta. That was referring to take out the kafamachta, right? And he can use that one for that. As long as he goes ahead and he gives it to the tzibur, he basically donates it.
Wasn't that the fourth one?
Yeah, the fourth. Yeah. This right.
Why is that in the Buddhist yachid, not Buddhist tzibur?
It's I guess right. He says. Right, it says Hotzas Kamachta She'enat Stricha Letzibur El Lafishim Atelas Love Lifnas Zamakal Laficha Karela Bas Yaakov. In other words, it wasn't really. It was, but it was really just like cleaning up your work, right? Cleaning up your work, and that was the real avoda was done, and therefore otherwise referred to as tzibur. So God says Pshita. Right, if he goes ahead and he donates it and it's part of the tzibur, so what would be the issue? So what would you say? Nichlas Shema Leim Sona Yafa Yafa. Maybe he wouldn't go ahead and donate it right properly, and therefore not really, give it over, right? Person doesn't, if he says I'm I'm donating it, but he doesn't have in mind he's really going to donate it. Maybe that doesn't really become shel tzibur. Maybe he's not going to do it. Kamash Malan, that we're not chayshish for that. And Amru Alav al Rabbi Yishmael ben Pavi. So he said about Rabbi Yishmael ben Pavi, Sha'asala ima k'tanis shel mea mana, right? We're talking about 800, 8 mana, 12 mana, right? 18 mana, right? This over here was 100 mana, right? The life shav avodas yachid, and he would use it to go ahead and do the avodas yachid. And he would go ahead and be meiser and give it to the tzibur in order that it should be part, owned by the tzibur when he goes in to retrieve the machta and the kaf. And Amr Love al Rebbe Elazar ben Charsum, they said about the wealthy Rebbe Elazar ben Charsum, Shasala Imak Denis Mishtei Ruba, right? It was 10,000, it was 20,000 mana, right? 20,000 mana, right? Times 100, right? 20,000 add 2 zeros, right? 20,000, 200,000, 2 million, right? 2 million zoos, right? And that's how that one costs. But however, that material was so thin, was so fine, they wouldn't allow him to wear it. It would look like he was almost like new, right? It was so thin, right? It was so fine that it was like almost like not sneeze. And could you see through it, right? Each one, the threads, the materials were like sixfold, right? They're kafel shisha. So how could they see through it? So he says, no, I guess it can be seen through the material, just like wine could be seen through a cup. So I guess they're able to see through the fine material, and therefore they said maybe get something else. Maybe I know this is very expensive and nice, but maybe use something else. Fine. Now comes a nice, fun Gemara. So Tanur Rabbanan, speaking of Rebbe Elazar ben Charsim, so Tanur Rabbanan Ani v'Yasher v'Rasha Bayin Ladin. So you have, say a poor person or a wealthy person or a Rasha, right? They come to their final din. La'ani Ayrim Lo. So they say their final din up in Shemai. They say Ayrim Lo. Yipnei Mala Sakta B'Torah. Mr. Poor person, right? Why weren't you Isaac B'Torah? Im Amar Ani Ayisi V'Torah B'Miznasai. He says, look, I got a good excuse, right? I was poor, right? I didn't have time. I had to go ahead and put food on the table. So Amrim Lo, so they say to him, Klum Ani Hayisa Yaisim Hillel. There was no person poorer than Hillel. And Amr Alav al Hillel Zakin, they said about Hillel Zakin, Shevachol Yom v'Yom Haya Oisa Mishtacher V'Tarpik, that every day he used to go out and work. V'Tarpik, I guess a coin, right? Sell a Medina, right? It was a Chatzi dinar. That was the amount he used to go ahead and earn a Chatzi dinar a day for his work, right? He would, every day would go out and Haya Noisin and Chatziv Haya Noisin l'Shem Beis Hamedrash, and half of it he would give it basically to get into the Beis Medrash. The other one was used to support his family, for him and his family. So even the meager wages that he had, half of it would go to the base medrash, right, to get in to learn, and the other half would go to his household. And one time he did not; he wasn't able to go ahead and earn money that day. Right. So, and the guard at the base medrash, he wouldn't let him in, right? He didn't sign up for Shabbos to get in, right? Like they have here, right? He didn't sign up, and the guard wouldn't let him in, right? You're not on the list. Sorry, hello. So what do you do? Allah, he went up. He went up and he went on the skylight. On the skylight, there's a little window there. You can hear it on the inside. In order for him to hear the divrei Torah from Shemaiah and Avtalia. And Amru Isa Yom Erev Shabbos Haisa, that was a Friday. The Tkufas Teves Haisa, and it was in the middle of Tkufas Teves. It was in the winter. The Yorad Alav Sheleg Mina Shemayim, and then it snowed that night, and I guess he fell asleep there. Uksha Muda Shachar, and then morning came. So Amr Lo Shemai V'Atalia. So Shemai said to Atalia, he said, Avtalia Nachi, Avtalia, my brother. V'chol Yoim Habayis Meir. Every day we always have light from the skylight, right? Today is dark. What's going on? Shema Yom Hamunanu. Perhaps it's a cloudy day. So he tzitza in AM. They looked up the road. Dumus Adam Baruba. They looked up where they usually get the usual skylight to see if it was cloudy, and they see, it looks like a shape of a man up there. So Alu, they went up. Matzolav room shloish amos shelik. So they saw that basically piled upon him was like 3 amos of snow. Parku ve'chetziu. Right, they took him down and they washed him up. They basically tried to warm him up. They brought up for the fire. As a Shabbos. I said for this person, it's fit to be, Machal Shabbos. I guess to get him, to save his life, right? So he doesn't get sick. So. But what do you see from the story? You see from the story that Hillel was very, very poor, and nevertheless, he found time every single day to go ahead and learn Torah, right? So the point wasn't that his mysterious nefesh at the end. The point was that every day he made very little, and he would use that towards the base matters to learn Torah. So therefore, don't give me your excuses, right? When he says, "Hey, I had to go ahead and make a living," right? I wasn't, wasn't born into, with a silver spoon. I had to go ahead and work. I didn't have time to learn. Not an excuse. Next person, Ashir, wealthy person. Why are we not Look, I was very wealthy and I had all these, assets and businesses and so on and so forth. And I was very busy doing that, right? I was very busy, right? Looking after my investments. Klum Ashir Hayisa Yaisir mi Rebbe Elazar, right? No one was wealthier than Rabbi Elazar. And Rabbi Elazar ben Charson said about this. Rabbi Elazar ben Charson, he was the one who I mentioned, right? Whose mother made him this 2 million zuz, right? Tunic for Yom Kippurim. Right? He left him 1,000 cities, right? On the dry land. 1,000 ships at sea. Huh? Which? I think cities over here, like an ear.
No, that's Ayarim. No, sorry. That's Ayarim, and this is Ayarot. Okay.
Right. So it says, right, in the land, and by then there was boats out in sea, right? He would take like a flask of flour on his shoulder, and would go from city to city to go ahead and learn Torah, right? So he had all these investments, all this money, but he made himself like a poor person, right? Just like a regular person, right? And to go learn Torah, to seek Torah. One time they his workers in one of the towns he was in, right? He basically owned the town. No one recognized him. It was like that show is the Undercover Boss, right? He was like the original undercover boss. They didn't know who he was, right? They found him. The Asu Bangaria, they basically made him like a worker. It says, hey, we all work for the, for Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum. You got to go work now. You can't do nothing. Some of them, Bagasham, you can. Right? Guys, leave me. Right? I'll pay you guys anything. Just leave me. Let me just go learn Torah. And Amru Lo, and they said to him, right? It says, oh no, by the life of our boss, Rabbi Elazar ben Charson, we're not going to go ahead and leave you, allow you just not to work, right? You got to go ahead and work for the man. And so we see from there that basically they didn't know who he was. They didn't recognize him, right? He wasn't involved in work. He was involved in Torah, which is why they didn't recognize him. And they tried to go ahead and put him to work. And so we see that despite the fact that he was wealthy beyond, belief, nevertheless, he was Isai B'Torah, Kol Hayom B'Chol Halay. And Russia, what are they? Russia, Russia, why were you not Isaac B'Torah? Right? Right? So here's a good excuse. The guy says, look, you made me really good looking, right? I have all, my Yetzer Hara is working overtime, right? Guy doesn't have so many opportunities. So, okay, there's no excuse. But me, all I had was opportunities. You trying to see Yetzer Hara? So we say to this Russia, Klum Noah Hayisa. Yosef, nobody was more pleasant looking than Yosef at Tzaddik. Amar Lo Yosef at Tzaddik said about Yosef. Tzaddik b'chol yom v'yom haisa eishes patifar. Mishidalza b'dvarim. Right? She used to go ahead and try to seduce him with her words. Begadu shalav shalo shachris lo lav shalo arvis. And the clothes, right, she would wear in the morning. She would wear in the evenings. Begadu shalav shalo arvis. She would change and wear an evening wear. Lo lav shalo shachris. She would wear in the morning. She always change her clothes, trying to seduce him. And Amar Lo Yishama Li. She said, listen to me, right? Take my offer. Samarlo, lav. No, I can't. I'm not going to. Samarlo, Hareini, I'm going to go ahead and lock you up in jail. Samarlo, Hashem Matir Asurim says, what do I hear? You're not in charge. Hashem is the one who gets people out of jail. Hareini Kavavis Kamasecha, I'll knock you down. Hashem is okay. Kafufim. Hashem is the one who he stands up the people who are bent down or bent over. And Hareini Masamis Enecha, I'll go blind you. Hashem Pakeach Yivrit. Right, Hashem, he's the one who he makes allows the blind to see. Nastalo elav kikari kesef. I'll give you. She offered him 1,000 kikarim of kesef, of silver. Lishma let to listen to him. Lishkav esla to lie with her, and liyasima, as the pasuk says, lishkav esla liyasima below ratza. And once again, he said no. And what is this pasuk referring to? Lishma aleha. Right? What is the lishma? Where's the ches? Let me see this pasuk. Right? So no pasuk over there. So it says over there. No, so it says lishma lel means lishkav esla be'elam haza. So lishma lel means basically the double lingo she does. Basically, he didn't want to lie with her, right? To lie with her be'elam haza in this world, and liyasima to be with her li'elam haba in the world to come to have. Because if he was lie with her, then his portion in the world to come would be with her, and he did not want that. So nimsa. Hillel Mechayv Sanim. We see from this Maisa, from this Brisa, that Hillel was Mechayv Sanim. Hillel, because of Hillel's actions, requires people who are very poor, nevertheless, to learn Torah. And Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum Mechayv Ashirim, and Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum was obligated those who are wealthy to learn Torah. And Yosef at Tzaddik also, who, despite the fact that he had many opportunities and was the victim of seduction, nevertheless, he was Mechayiv as Rashai. He would obligate the people of Rashai to go ahead and learn Torah. Fine. Now Mishnah. Right? We'll continue the Mishnah. The bottom, what time is minute today? 45, right? We have 15 minutes. Plenty of time to say Karbonos today. Right? So the Mishnah says, Bolo Eitzel Paro. He goes to his bull, right? Which is his first offering. Till now we basically discussed all the avodas that were done on a regular day, right? The Tamid, the Ketairas, right? The Chavitin. So Bolo Eitzel Paro comes to the bull, and Paro haya oimed bera ulam mizbeach, right? So the bull, right, was standing between the ulam, right, which is the antechamber, and the mizbeach, and the mizbeach itself, right? There's some pictures actually on base. We actually started to prepare tomorrow. So you see over here, I'll just show a picture, right? So you see over here, here's the antechamber, which is over here, and here is mizbeach. So he would stand right over there. Right? There's actually a little picture of the bull, which is on tomorrow's daf to discuss the location. But
is that where all the hooks were?
The hook that was on top where they would for further up.
Basically, spot on.
Yeah, but over here it was between the mizbeach and the ulam. So I ulam mizbeach, and it was roisha ledarim. Now its head, or it was upon of lamarav. So his head was facing south, and it was the animal was standing basically north to south with his head downward, right? Upon of lamarav, and the animals, if it was right, if you could picture it, in front of lamarav, and his face was looking west, right? So basically, it was animals facing this way, and it was turned lamarav west, right, west towards the ulam, right? V'hakoin oimed b'mizrach, and the kohen would stand on the east of it, on the other side of it, right? Upana lamarav, also facing the same way as the animal. The semich shtei yodav alav, and he would place his two hands upon the animal, umizvada, and then he would do his first of his confessions, the kachay oimer, and this is what he would say, Ana Hashem. Ana Hashem. I guess repeat after me, right? I was it, right? Right. We said, right, like we said in Yom Kippur, right? So Ana Hashem, avisi pashati chatasi lefanecha. Right. These different lashonos of averos, right? He sinned, right? He erred, right? And he rebelled against you. Lefanecha, ani ubeis, me and my household. Ana Hashem kaperna, right? Atone for me, lavonas, l'pshayim, l'chatayim. Atone for me all these my rebellious actions, my rebellious sins. Shavisi v'shavarati v'shachatasi l'fanecha, that I sinned. Ani levesi, me and my household. All right, like it was written in the Torah. Because in this day he will atone for him. So we see there's a separate positive where he has to atone for him and his household, right? So him and his household. So therefore, this first one, it was not for Bnei Yisrael, it was not for everybody. This was a private one for him and his family, because him and his family, the Kohen Gadol, had to be pure of sin. So therefore, this was the par of the Kohen Gadol, and therefore it had its own confession and its own smicha upon the animal. And then all the people after he said this, Baruch Shen Kavod Machusai Le'olam V'ed. So then after that they said, right, Baruch Shen Kavod, right, blessed is the name of Kavod Machusai, right, his honor and his kingdom Le'olam V'ed, forever and ever. So then I guess tonight, I guess we'll pick up from here. It's Hashem tonight at 11:45. We will pick up from here and do the next two blocks. So those of you who are coming to Shul tonight, we're starting at the top of Lamed Vav and Aleph. Those of you who cannot make it, so I guess the plan is to get to the bottom of Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. All right, Shkayach. Have a good day.